Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl, or Carl to my friends, or to all of you. You can call me Carl if you want. And yeah, this is something I've been wanting to talk about for like months now. But I've been like trying to gather up at least a good chunk of stuff to, make my argument here. Because as you know, one of my uh, uh, list of videos was like a watch along of one of my favorite TV shows that was on Spike TV called Deadliest Warrior. And it was hosted by, you know, uh, uh, crap, I'm blanking on their names right now. What the heck? What's wrong with me? Uh, uh, it's wrong with me. Hold on, because I do not want to screw this up. I feel like one of them name is Jeff. Right. Jeffrey DeMolin, Armand Dorian, and Richard Makowitz. And yeah, it was honestly one of my favorite shows. Where you actually get you know experts on different historical and modern warriors, test out their background, their war strategies and weapons. Even later on, you learn about their psychology and diet, all that stuff that make up these particular warriors or warrior class, and put them in a simulation with all the tests that they run and see who would win in the reenactment. And it's like one of the dopest things that I've seen. And the show ended after season 3, and I really want this show to come back. And I think a lot of fans, because people have been doing checking out my watch along videos of each episode of Deadliest War up on my channel. Which, by the way, please leave a like, follow me in the links in the description, and hit the notification bell if you are so kind. But it's been a lot of people been doing like the checking out my watch along videos. And honestly, it's a great show, a fantastic show, and it could have easily have gone on for a good, I don't know, like you could easily push this to 10 seasons at the most, because there's a lot of warriors from past and present you can easily mine from. And I don't know if it was the situation where, I don't know, it got too expensive or budget reasons. I'm not sure. They seem like they keep getting like better funding each season. Even by the third season, had like a test table so you can see each warrior's battle strategy, and that way you can compare different warriors' battle strategies, which one was more efficient compared to the other. And that was pretty nifty to include into the testing, because that is important. Battle strategy is a key component. And I've been wanting to know, what if there was a season 4 and 5? Because I had like at least 22 warriors that I pull up, some of which I can think can be a good matchup against each other. Others are just something I want to throw on the list, because these are great warriors in their own right through different time periods. So yeah, so I'm gonna pull up like there you go. Got screen capture and slide. So the first words on the list is the Dahomey tribe, or not? Well, just the Dahomey Mino, or the Agoji, or Agoji, Mino or Minion. The all-female military regiment of the Kingdom of Dahomey, which, if you've seen The Woman King, starring Viola Davis and John Boyega, based off these all-female West African warriors who uh, uh, fought against other warring tribes and slave traders. But the movie, kind of wasn't like completely accurate so far as like, because they did kind of market it as like, oh, these are like, they fighting off all these like slave traders, but historically they were a part, for at least for a time, a part of selling their rival tribe off to slavery, and you have a few, some to themselves, until eventually they kind of came around on that. It's a whole thing. Look it up. But these women are also based off of, if you watch the Black Panther movie, the Dora Milaje. So yeah. So here we go. The origin. I know you can't see it, given like the how the picture size is, but I was gonna read a little bit off to you, and I tried to look up like you know where the particular weapons that they use, but I only got like at least a little bit. But that's what you need like experts and weapon experts on these particular wars to showcase a particular weapon that they were known to use in their prime. Uh, King of, I'm gonna butcher this, Haju Baje, who ruled from 1645 to 1685, the third king of Dahomey, is said to have originally started the group which would later become the Mino, as a corps of elephant hunters called the Jibito. Uh, uh, Hubaje's daughter, Queen Hangbi, ruling from 1716 to 1718, established a female bodyguard. European merchants recorded their presence. According to tradition, her brother and successor, King Agaje, successfully used them in Dahomey's defeat of the neighboring kingdom of Savi in 1727. The group of female warriors was referred to as Mino, meaning our mothers, in the Fon language, by the male army of Dahomey. Other sources contest the claim that King Agaje's older sister, Queen Hangbi, was ruler to establish the units. Some even going so far as to question whether or not Queen Hangbi actually existed. From the time of King Jezo, ruling from 1818 to 1858, Dahomey became increasingly militaristic. Jezo placed great importance on the army, increasing its budget and formalizing its structure from ceremonial to a serious military, while European narratives refer to the women soldiers as Amazons. They call themselves Ahosi, king's wives, or Mino, our mothers. Recruitment. Jizo recruited both men and women as soldiers from foreign captives. Female soldiers were also recruited from free Dahomean women, with some enrolled from as young as 8 years of age. Other accounts indicate that the Mino were recruited from among the Ahosi, of which they were often hundreds. Some women in Fon society became soldiers voluntarily, while others were involuntarily enrolled if their husbands or fathers complained to the king about their behavior. Membership among the Mino was supposed to hone any aggressive character traits for the purpose of war. During their membership, they were not allowed to have children or be part of married life, though they were legally married to the king. Many of them were virgins. The regiment had a semi-sacred status, which was intertwined with the Fon belief in Vodun. That's Vodun, a religion practiced by the Aja, Iwe, and Fon peoples of Benin, Togo, Ghana, and Nigeria. Oral Dahomean traditions holds that upon recruitment, the Amazons were subjected to female genital mutilation. Ugh. The Mino trained with intense physical exercise. They learned survival skills and indifference to pain and death. storming acacia thorn defenses in military exercises, and executing prisoners. Discipline was emphasized. Serving in the Mino offered women the opportunity to rise to positions of command and influence in an environment structured for individual empowerment. The Mino were also wealthy and held high status. Hmm. Combat structure. The women soldiers were rigorously trained in pain endurance and speed. Once training was completed, they were given uniforms. By the mid 19th century, they numbered between 1,000 to 6,000 women, about a third of the entire Dahomey army, according to reports written by visitors. The reports also noted that the women soldiers were consistently judged to be superior to the male soldiers in effectiveness and bravery in battle. The women soldiers were said to be structured in parallel with the army as a whole, with a center wing, the king's bodyguards, flanked on both sides, each under separate commanders. Some accounts note that each male soldier had a Mino counterpart. In one mid 19th century account by an English observer, it was documented that the women who had 3 stripes of whitewash around each leg were honored with marks of distinction. The women's army consisted of a number of regiments: huntress, riflewomen, reapers, archers, and gunners. Each regiment had different uniforms, weapons, and commanders. In the latter period, the Dahomey female warriors were armed with Winchester rifles, clubs, and knives. Units were under female command. An 1851 published translation of a war chant of the women's claims the warriors would chant, As or Ah, the blacksmith takes an iron bar and by fire changes its fashion, so have we changed our nature. We are no longer women, we are men. So yeah, I'm just gonna just like a brief thing here. So this is like the territorial area, this purple spot. So yeah, I mean they're badasses. I mean like yeah, you know, the movie was like certain parts they took liberties on. I wouldn't say it's super big liberties, but they kind of like I won't say skated, but they did kind of it left it murky about the fact that they were a part of the whole slave trade thing, and it took them a while before they came around on that, and they became like a wealthy tribe because of that fact. But aside from that, they were honestly the most renowned African warriors. It just goes to show like the female badassness, because you can easily run parallels to the Dora Milaje and MCU. The way they fight is pretty much based off of these particular warriors. So yeah, I mean like this is extremely dope. So you can easily use like at least well the fact that like they have guns, you could and they work as a unit. You can because I was about to say like typically uh when it comes to matchups, you got pre Black Powder and then after Black Powder, where you get into the whole modern warrior era. And technically, you can put this in the same criteria as like pirates, because they technically have guns, but it's old-fashioned guns, where you don't get like a rapid uh, fire mechanism. But you could probably set it like a 5v5 women army against another warrior of the same kind of like you know equal footing. Don't know who, but you got to find like some other group of iconic female warriors that can go up against the homie. Uh, Billy the Kid, because I had to put some like a cowboy on here, because it used um, Jesse James in season 2. And I felt like, let's get another cowboy on here. Billy the Kid, aka Henry McCarty, uh, born 1859 in New York City, died July 14th, 1881, by age 22. So he was fairly young. Caused of death of gunshot wound. Yeah, I guess he didn't have any children. Uh, of course, he got a 6-shooter because he was like in the old West. But he also probably should have like a Winchester, maybe. Don't know like all of Billy the Kid's weaponry. Okay, the real Billy the Kid carried a Colt 1877 DA Thunderer revolver, 41 long Colt, uh, uh, Colt Thunderer. Single action army, quick draw sidearm. So a lot of 6-shooters. Smith and Wesson. This is like a Young Guns movie. I don't know. Yeah, the Thunderer he used. Yeah. Winchester 73 rifle. They supposedly use both guns interchangeably. It's only like 2 guns we know of. I'm pretty sure there's more. But anyway, early life, Henry McCarty was born to parents of Irish Catholic ancestry, Catherine and Patrick McCarty, in New York City. A theory suggests that he was born on September 17, 1859, in New York City. He was baptized Patrick Henry McCarty at the Church of St. Peter on September 28th. While his birth year has been confirmed as 1859, the exact date of his birth has been disputed as either the 17th of September or November 23rd of that year. A letter from an official of St. Peter's Church in Manhattan states it isn't in possession of the record showing McCarthy was baptized there on the 28th of September. Following the death of her husband Patrick, Catherine McCarthy and her sons moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, where she met William Henry Harrison Atrim. The McCarthy family moved with Atrim to Wichita, Kansas in 1870. After moving again a few years later, Catherine married Atrim on March 1st of 1873 at the First Presbyterian Church of New Mexico's territory. McCarthy and his brother Joseph were witness to the ceremony. Shortly afterwards, the family moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Joseph McCarthy began using the name Joseph Atrim. Shortly before McCarthy's mother, Catherine, died of tuberculosis, then called consumption on September 16th, 1864. So just like a year later after she married. William Atrim abandoned the McCarthy boys, leaving them orphans. What a scumbag. Uh, First crimes. McCarthy was 15 years old when his mother died. Sarah Brown, the owner of the boarding house, gave him room and board in exchange for work. On September 16, 1875, McCarthy was caught stealing food. 10 days later, McCarthy and George Schaefer robbed a Chinese laundry, stealing clothing and 2 pistols. McCarthy was charged with theft and was jailed. He escaped 2 days later and became a fugitive, as reported in the Silver City Herald the next day. The first story published about him. McCarthy located his stepfather, stayed with him until Atrim threw him out. McCarthy stole clothing and guns from him. It was the last time the two saw each other. After leaving Atrim, McCarthy traveled to southeastern Arizona Territory, where he worked as a ranch hand and gambled his wages in nearby gaming houses. In 1876, he was hired as a ranch hand by well-known rancher Henry Hooker. During this time, McCarthy became acquainted with John R. Mackey, a Scottish-born criminal, formerly U.S. Cavalry private, who, following his discharge, remained near the U.S. Army post at Camp Grant in Arizona. The two men soon began stealing horses from local soldiers. McCarthy became known as Kid Atrim because of his youth, slight build, clean-shaven appearance, and personality. And on August 17, 1877, McCarthy was at a saloon in the village of Bonita when he got into an argument with Francis P. Windy Cahill, a blacksmith who reportedly had bullied McCarthy and on more than one occasion called him pimp. McCarthy in turn called Cahill a son of a bitch, whereupon Cahill threw McCarthy to the floor and the two struggled for McCarthy's revolver. McCarthy shot and mortally wounded Cahill. A witness said Billy had no choice. He had to use his equalizer. Cahill died the following day. McCarthy fled but returned a few days later and was apprehended by Miles Wood, the local justice of peace. McCarthy was detained and held in the Camp Grant guardhouse but escaped before law enforcement could arrive. McCarthy stole a horse and fled Arizona Territory for New Mexico Territory, but Apaches took the horse from him, leaving him to walk many miles to the nearest settlement. At Fort Stanton in the Pecos Valley, McCarthy, starving and near death, went to the home of friend and Seven Rivers Warriors gang member John Jones, whose mother, Barbara, nursed him back to health. After regaining his health, McCarthy went to Apache Tahoe, a former Army post, where he joined a band of rustlers who raided herds owned by cattle magnate John Chisholm in Lincoln County. After McCarthy was spotted in Silver City, his involvement with the gang was mentioned in a local newspaper. At some point in 1877, McCarthy began to refer himself by the name William H. Bonney. So, yeah, a little slice of life. So, yeah, I mean, Billy the Kid. I mean, honestly, he's, I do love myself some Cowboys. Because I grew up watching, westerns, so it's like I had like a respect for the whole cowboy old west thing. But yeah, like Billy the Kid needs to be on this list of potential warriors for a what if, season. Like if one actually happens, Billy the Kid need to be on the list. Blackbeard. Okay, I had a pirate on here, and we had like just like a general pirate in the first season. We haven't had a well-known pirate. Uh, like to put a name to the moniker. So I figured like get the most infamous pirate, Edward Teach, aka Blackbeard, because he's part of the most like feared uh, pirate in history. What are the weapons he used before he died? Double cannons. The contents of Blackbeard's flagship, the Queen's Anne's Revenge, have been recovered. He's talking about like don't know about any kind of ship battles, but pistols, the flintlock pistols, blunderbuss. I mean, typical pirate stuff, and they all kind of use the same thing. Uh, yeah, he had, of course, the cutlass. But I'm pretty sure Blackbeard had like a distinct uh, weapons, because yeah, you can argue that it's not that different from what the generic pirate used in season one. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, you can probably still use the cutlass, and of course, like pistols. But I'm pretty sure Blackbeard had like a distinct, a couple of distinct weapons tailor made for what he used more often. Okay. All right. Little is known about Blackbeard's early life. It's commonly believed that at the time of his death, he was between 35 and 40 years old, and thus born in about 1680. In contemporary records, his name is most often given as Blackbeard, Edward Thatch, or Edward Teach. The latter is most often used. Several spellings of his surname exist. Like Thatch, Thack, Theach, Thack, Tack, Tack, Thack, Fufa, Fufa. One early source claimed that his surname was Drummond, but the lack of any supporting documentation makes this unlikely. Pirates habitually use fictitious surnames while engaged in piracy so as not to tarnish the family name, which makes it unlikely that Teach's real name will ever be known. In 17th century rise of Britain's American colonies and the rapid 18th century expansion of the Atlantic slave trade had made Bristol an important international seaport, and Teach was most likely raised in what was then the second largest city in England. He could almost certainly read and write. He communicated with merchants and, when killed, had in his possession a letter addressed to him by the Chief Justice and Secretary of Province of Carolina, Tobias Knight. Author Robert Lee speculated that Teach may therefore have been born into a respectable, wealthy family. He may have arrived in the Caribbean in the last years of the 17th century on a merchant vessel, possibly a slave ship. The 18th century author Charles Johnson claimed that Teach was for some time a sailor operating from Jamaica on privateer ships during the War of the Spanish Succession, and he had often distinguished himself for his uncommon boldness and personal courage. It is unknown at what point during the war Teach joined the fighting, as with the record of most of his life before he became a pirate. Okay. With his history of colonialism, trade, and piracy, the West Indies was setting for many 17th and 18th century maritime incidents. The privateer turned pirate Henry Jennings and his followers decided early in the 18th century to use the uninhabited island of New Providence as a base of their operations. It was within easy reach of the Florida Straits and its busy shipping lanes, which were filled with European vessels crossing the Atlantic. New Providence Harbor could easily accommodate hundreds of ships, but was too shallow for the Royal Navy's larger vessels. The author George Woodbury described New Providence as no city of homes. It was a place of temporary sojourn and refreshment for a literally floating population. Okay, let's go on to Blackbeard. On 28th November 1717, Teach's two ships attacked a French merchant vessel off the coast of St. Vincent. They each fired a broadside across its bulwarks, killing several of its crew and forcing its captain to surrender. Second. It was during the cruise with Hornigold that the earliest known report of Teach was made, in which he was recorded as a pirate in his own right, in command of a large crew. In a report made by a Captain Matthew Munthy on an anti-piracy patrol for North Carolina, Thatch was described as operating a sloop 6-gun and about 70 men. In September, Teach and Hornigold encountered Steed Bonnet, a landowner of military officer from a wealthy family who had turned to piracy earlier that year. Bonnet's crew of about 70 were reportedly dissatisfied with his command, so with Bonnet's permission, Teach took control of his ship Revenge. The pirates' flotilla now consisted of 3 ships: Teach on Revenge, Teach Old Slope, and Hornigold's Ranger. By October, another vessel had been captured and added to the small fleet. The sloops Robert of Philadelphia and Good Intent of Dublin were stopped on the 22nd of October, 1717, and the cargo holds emptied. So yeah, he's his. You can easily quantify. There's like a long list of stuff that Blackbeard did where he just like was dominating this, the golden age of piracy. He and like if you watch, because I definitely checked out during the lockdown period of in 2020 when everybody's inside. I checked out what's that show called? Uh, oh crap, that pirate show. It was on a long time ago, like during like the mid 2000s, but I didn't really get into it. Then I checked it out. Crap, what was it? I know it's on like the reference here. Uh, Crap, what is it? It's on the tip of my tongue. Black Sails. Uh, Ray Stevenson played Blackbeard in season 3 and 4 of Black Sails. Because yeah, it was like very short seasons that lasted only like a year. So yeah, Black Sails, that was it. And of course, I played a little bit of. I think I streamed it, as a matter of fact, so you can check it out on my YouTube channel. Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and he was like a prominent character in that game. So yeah, Blackbeard should be on the list. Bonnie and Clyde. Uh, uh, you know, don't even quantify it as like Western, but it's like in like the early 10s, 20s. It was the most iconic. It Joker and Harley situation. You can easily it was like a very Bonnie and Clyde relationship, like the infamous duo couple that were like well-renowned thieves. Uh, Okay, so a lot of 1920 type of weapons. Full auto Browning automatic rifles, 20 gauge Remington Model 11 semi auto sawed off shotgun, 10 gauge Winchester Model 1901 lever action sawed off shotgun, 32 caliber M1903 Colt automatic pistol, 38 Colt Detective Special Revolver, 25 ACP Colt automatic pistol, 45 caliber Colt M1909 revolver, 45 ACP Colt M1911 automatic pistols. So I'm not sure what duo you can go. Another famous duo you can put up against Bonnie and Clyde. I was about to say Thelma and Louise, but that's a whole different thing, and that's fictitious. Uh, yeah, but Bonnie and Clyde is the most infamous robbers in the 1920s. Uh, Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born 1910 in Wawena, Texas, the second of three children. Her father, Charles Robert Parker, was a bricklayer who died when Bonnie was 4 years old. Her widowed mother, Emma Parker, moved her family back to her parents' home in Cement City, an industrial suburb in West Dallas, where she worked as a seamstress. As an adult, Bonnie wrote poems such as The Story of Suicide Sal and The Trail's End, the latter more commonly known as The Story of Bonnie and Clyde. In her second year in high school, Parker met Roy Thornton. The couple out of school and married, dropped out of school and married September 25th, 1926, 6 days before her 16th birthday. Their marriage was marred by his frequent absences and brushes with the law, and it proved to be short-lived. They never divorced. Both their paths never crossed again after January 1929. Parker was still wearing Thornton's wedding ring when she died. Thornton was in prison when he heard of her death, commenting, "I'm glad they jumped out like they did. It's much better than being caught." Sentenced to 5 years for robbery in 1933, and after attempting several prison breaks from other facilities, Thornton was killed while trying to escape from the Huntsville State Prison on October 3rd, 1937. After the end of her marriage, Parker moved back in with her mother and worked as a waitress in Dallas. One of her regular customers was postal worker Ted Hilton. In 1932, he joined the Dallas County Sheriff's Department and eventually served as a member of the posse that killed Bonnie and Clyde. Parker briefly kept a diary early in 1929 when she was aged 18, writing of her loneliness, her impatience with life in Dallas, and her love of photography. Clyde Burrow was born in 1909 into a poor farming family in Ellis County, Texas, southeast of Dallas. He was the fifth of seven children of Henry Basil Burrow and Kumi Tel, Tel, Telthea Walker. The family moved to Dallas in the early 1920s as part of a wider migration pattern from rural areas to the city, where many settled in the urban slum of West Dallas. The Burrows spent their first months in West Dallas living under their wagon until they got enough money to buy a tent. Burrow was first arrested in late 1926 at age 17 after running when police confronted him over a rental car that he had failed to return on time. His second arrest was with his brother Buck soon after for possession of stolen turkeys. Burrow had some legitimate jobs during 1927 through the 29th, but he also cracked safes, robbed stores, and stole cars. He met 19-year-old Parker through a mutual friend in 1930 in January, and they spent much time together during the following weeks. Their romance was interrupted when Burrow was arrested and convicted of auto theft. Burrow was sent to Eastham Prison Farm in April 1930 at the age of 21. He escaped from the prison farm shortly after his incarceration using a weapon Parker smuggled to him. He was recaptured shortly after and sent back to prison. Burrow was repeatedly sexually assaulted while in prison, and he retaliated by attacking and killing his tormentor with a pipe, crushing his skull. This was his first murder. Another inmate who was already serving a life sentence claimed responsibility. In order to avoid hard labor in the fields, Burrow purposely had two of his toes chopped off in late 1932 by another inmate or himself. Because of this, he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. However, Burrow was set free 6 days after his initial injury. Without his knowledge, Burrow's mother had successfully petitioned for his release. He was paroled with from Eastham on February 2nd, 1932, now a hardened and bitter criminal. His sister Marie said something awful sure must have happened to him in prison because he wasn't the same person when he got out. Taylor's all his time with all incarcerations and people coming back from that. Fellow inmate Ralph Foltz said that he watched Clyde change from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake. In his post-Eastham career, Burrow robbed grocery stores and gas stations at a rate far outpacing the 10 or so bank robberies attributed to him in the Burrow gang. His favorite weapon was the M1918 Browning automatic rifle, the BAR. According to John Neal Phillips, Burrow's goal in life was not to gain fame or fortune from robbing banks, but to seek revenge against the Texas prison system for the abuses that he had sustained while serving time. First meeting, several accounts describe Parker and Burrow's first meeting. The most credible states that they met on January 5th, 1930, at the home of Burrow's friend, Clarence Clay, at 105 Herbert Street in West Dallas. Burrow was 20 years old and Parker was 19. Parker was out of work and staying with a female friend to assist her during her recovery from a broken arm. Burrow dropped by the girl's house while Parker was in the kitchen making hot chocolate. Both were smitten immediately. Most historians believe that Parker joined Burrow because she had fallen in love with him. She remained his loyal companion as they carried out their many crimes and awaited the violent death that they viewed as inevitable. Famous armed robberies. For a short time, there's only probably like a couple of years of their infamous criminal not empire but criminal doings. They really made a name for themselves, and to this day they're synonymous for couples in getting into the crime together. And talking about falling in love with a bad boy, she was infamous of getting in with bad boys. Got their little what you call mug shots. So yeah, there's a lot. They infamous in a lot of pop culture. Slang. The idiomatic phrase "modern-day Bonnie and Clyde" generally refers to a man and a woman who operate together as present-day criminals. The colloquial expression "Bonnie and Clyde" is often used to describe a couple that is extremely loyal and willing to do anything for each other, even in the face of danger. In this instance, it is synonymous with the slang phrase "ride or die" and "ride or die chick," for example. The song "Oh Three Bonnie and Clyde" by Jay-Z and Beyonce knows. Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. It is a pop culture phrase from hybristophobia, bristophilia, the phenomena of becoming attracted to, sexually aroused by, or achieving orgasm based on knowledge of or watching an outrage or crime take place. For instance, high profile criminals, serial killers such as Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, and Richard Ramirez, reportedly receive volumes of sexual fan mail and love letters. So yeah, these two are like, you got to have Bonnie and Clyde on this. Like, say what you will, because they were criminals, and like I was, criminals don't really end in happy endings. It's very rare you find movies or TV shows where the criminal comes out on top. I think, like, off the top of my head, the Ocean's 11 films with uh Brad Pitt and George Clooney, in the end they come out on top where they don't get like busted. But you meet Danny Ocean as he's leaving jail, and at the end of the first movie, he briefly goes back to jail. So you kind of sort of can't really count that either. Maybe 9 to 5 is a movie that I heard that is the only movie that people know of that the criminals don't end up dead or in jail. And maybe what's the other one? With Denzel Washington and Clive Owen, with like Clive Owen robbing that bank. I forgot what it's called, but that's another one where like the bad guy, spoiler alert, the bad guy doesn't end up dead or in prison. Okay, the redcoats, the British redcoats. Oops. Okay. The British redcoat was armed with the short-land pattern musket, often called the Brown Bess. German units serving with Great Britain often carried the same muskets as British regulars. Okay. All right. Hold on. Light infantry weapons such as the Jaeger rifle. Uh, the bayonets, cannons. So the most, you know, because on season 3 of Deadliest Word, we had George Washington leading the uh, Continental Army against uh, Napoleon Bonaparte against his Grand Army. So of course you got to have like somebody in that same, roughly in that same era. I figured obviously the redcoats. You have the redcoats on there. Um, okay. Uh, there have been instances of red military clothing predated the general adoption of the new model army. The uniform is in Ireland during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. The soldiers of the Queen's Lord Lieutenant were on occasion referred to as redcoats by the Irish from the color of their clothing. As early as 1561, the Irish named a victory over these crown troops as Cath na Gazaderea, literally meaning the Battle of the Red Cossacks, but usually translated as the Battle of the Red Saguns, sagum being a cloak. Note the Irish word as Cossack or Cossack, but the word may be translated as coat, cloak, or even uniform. Okay. Can the Redcoats has evolved from being a British infantry men normally worn uniform to. This seems like more of like the uniform. Uh, British infantry. Okay. Until the English Civil War, England never had a standing army with professional officers and career corporals and sergeants. It is relied on militia organized by local officials or private forces mobilized by the nobility or on hired mercenaries from Europe. From the later Middle Ages until the English Civil War, when a foreign expeditionary force was needed, such as the one that Henry V of England took to France and that fought at the Battle of Agincourt. The army, a professional one, was raised for the duration of the expedition. So there's a lot here. There's a lot of history here. So yeah, it's like a long-standing reign here. Uh, Going as far back, almost like I said, like the Middle Ages, the latter of the Middle Ages, up until current day, and just kind of evolved from then. But I'm particularly focused on the one to the point of their earliest creation up to the point of losing the battle against George Washington. Uh, so they had like up until that point they had like a vast empire. So up until like at least the Redcoats like kind of like stopped because you got like the modern British Army now, but up until the point of 1914 up to the later Middle Ages, the British Army was kind of like the way Rome was like a massive superpower uh, uh, in the entire world before essentially America kind of took its place. Uh, so yeah, I mean, like I don't know what other kind of superpower army you can put up against, but somebody got to be in the same. Because I think they fought against a lot of people during that same period because they spent it for a good century. At least a couple of centuries. I would say a couple of centuries. Like, what's the latter little Middle Ages? Yeah, so like 1500 to 1914. So yeah, a couple of centuries here. Uh, so I'm not sure who you go up against the Redcoats, but you gotta be somebody. All right. Oh, who are these? I think this is 1 second. Some like British SAS. So yeah, like we're not done with the British yet. Uh, British SAS. Now we got finally got like the modern word now. Oh no, I can't spell. All right, the British Special Air Force, Special Air Service, established in the Second World War. Uh, okay. Okay. For handguns, you got like a Glock 17 or 19, 6-hour P226 or P228. Looking for the modern ones. Oh, there's only the pistols? Come on now. Okay, here we go. C8 carbine, UCIW, M16 variants, HKG3, HK33, HKG36. A lot of heckle and caulk type of style weapons. So we're looking at the more modern ones. Got a sniper rifle here, HK417. So yeah, we gotta try to focus on the modern ones. Claymore flashbangs. We're looking for something lethal here. It's Deadliest Warrior. Uh, avoid like Stinger missiles here. But yeah, you got like at least a lot here they can use here. Uh, the Special Air Service was a unit of the British Army during the Second World War that was formed in 1941 by David Stirling and originally called L Detachment, Special Air Service Brigade, the L dis, designation, and air service name being a tie-in to a British disinformation campaign, trying to deceive the access into thinking there was a paratrooper regiment with numerous units operating in the area. The real SAS would prove to the access that the fake one existed. It was conceived as a commando force to operate behind enemy lines in North African campaign, and initially consisted of 5 officers and 60 other ranks. In its first mission in November 1941 was a parachute drop in support of Operation Crusader offensive. Due to the German resistance and adverse weather conditions, the mission was a disaster. 22 men, a third of the unit, were killed or captured. Its second mission was a major success. Transported by a long-range desert group, it attacked 3 airfields in Libya, destroying 60 aircraft with the loss of 2 men and 3 jeeps. In September 1942, it was renamed First SAS, consisting at the time of 4 British squadrons, 1 Free French, 1 Greek, and the Full-Boat section. In January 1943, Colonel Sterling was captured in Tunisia, and Paddy Mayne replaced him as commander. In April 1943, the first SAS was reorganized into Special Raiding Squadron under Mayne's command, and the Special Boat Squadron was placed under the command of George Jellicoe. The Special Raiding Squadron fought in Sicily and Italy along with the 2nd SAS, which had been formed in North Africa in that same year, and part of the renaming of the small-scale raiding force. The squadron fought in Aegean Islands and Dodecanese until the end of the war. In 1944, the SAS Brigade was formed. The unit was formed from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th Air Service, and the F Squadron. Uh, Influence, okay. Following the post-war reconstitution of the service of other countries in the Commonwealth, we recognized their need for similar units. The Canadian Special Air Service Company was formed in 1947, being disbanded in 1949. So yeah, I mean, like I had to find some modern warriors, something that we haven't seen or need to be highlighted. So I'm trying to go different spots across the globe. Some that we probably haven't really put a focus on. Okay, speaking of Canada, blame Canada, blame Canada. Canadian Special Forces. Speaking of which. I put this on the list because Jeffrey de la Melin is from a Canadian who used to be a part of the Canadian Armed Forces. So I'm like, let me put in Canadians military regiment on the list because they're warriors. Yeah, it's Canada. I know we can make all the jokes in the world. I'm sure I have. But seriously, though, they have a military unit, and I think, put in the Canadian ones here. Special Operations Forces. Okay, Colt Canada series of rifles C7, C8, and C8SFW. The 6 Sauer SIG 716 G2. Heckler Koch MP5. FN Herstal P90. 6 Sauer P226 sidearm. A Remington Model 870 and Benelli M3 shotguns. FN Mini Me. 6981 light machine gun. Canada Special Operations Forces was generated and commanded by Ken Sofacom. I know how that sounds, which is a high readiness organization ready to deploy special operations forces on short notice to protect Canada and Canadians from threats to the national interests at home and abroad. Because we can join task force, I guess. But you get the general idea. Who else? Okay, here we go. We're going to have a couple. We have a couple of infamous warriors on the list, or at least depending on your point of view, infamous or famous. Fidel Castro. Now, yes, I know, a scumbag, but just like on season 3, we have Pol Pot versus Saddam Hussein. You're not celebrating these guys, but you got to get inside the mind of these type of dictators because they are warriors in their own right. Hmm. I know he was part of like some kind of yeah, he's part of like guerrilla warfare technically. So he has some training with weapons and military tactics. So Castro was born out of wedlock at his father's farm. Oh, let me go here. Uh, uh, Born August 13th, 1926. Yeah, probably like not too long after Bonnie and Clyde's situation. Uh, Died 2016 in November 25th at the age of 90. So this dude, died in normal circumstances, and this dude was a straight up dictator, and like there's many assassination attempts made on his life, all of them failed, which is astounding considering out of all the dictators, he's the one that kind of like lasted until the point of actual natural causes of death had to do him in on their own. That is just like mind blowing. But anyway, born out of wedlock at his father's farm, uh, August 13th, 1926, his father, Angel Arguez, a veteran of the Spanish-American War, was a migrant to Cuba from Galicia in the northwest of Spain. He had become financially successful by growing sugarcane in Las Manacas farm in Barin Oriente province. After the collapse of his first marriage, he took his household servant, Lina Ruiz Gonzalez of Carnaran, Carnaran ancestry, as his mistress and later second wife. Together they had 7 children, among them Fidel. At age 6, Castro was sent to live with his teacher in Santiago de Cuba before being baptized into the Roman Catholic Church at the age of 8. Being baptized enabled Castro to attend the La Salle boarding school in Santiago, where he regularly misbehaved. He was next sent to the privately funded Jesuit-run Dolores School in Santiago. In 1945, Castro transferred to the Jesuit-run El Colegio Havana. Although Castro took an interest in history, geography, and debate at Berlin, he did not excel academically, instead of devoting much of his time to playing sports. In 1945, Castro began studying law at the University of Havana. Admitting he was politically illiterate, Castro became embroiled in student activism and the violent gangster gangsterismo culture within the university. After becoming passionate about anti-imperialism and opposing U.S. intervention in the Caribbean, he unsuccessfully campaigned for the presidency of the Federation of University Students on a platform of honesty, decency, and justice. Castro became critical of the corruption and violence of President Roman Guru's government, delivering a public speech at the subject in November 1946 that received coverage on the front page of several newspapers. In 1947, Castro joined the Party of Cuban People, or Orthodox Party, founded by veteran politician Eduardo Chibias. A charismatic figure, Chibias advocated social justice, honest government, and political freedom, while his party opposed corruption and demanded reform. Though Chibias came third in the 1948 general election, Castro remained committed to working on his behalf. Student violence escalated after Guru employed gang leaders as police officers, and Castro soon received a death threat urging him to leave the university. However, he refused to do so and began to carry a gun and surrounded himself with armed friends. In later years, anti-Castro dissidents accused him of committing gang-related assassinations at the time, but these accusations remain unproven. The American historian John Lewis Gaddis wrote that Castro began his career as a revolutionary with no ideology at all. He was a student politician turned street fighter turned guerrilla, a voracious reader, an interminable speaker, and a pretty good baseball player. The only ideas that appear to have driven him were a lust for power, a willingness to use violent means to get it, and a unwillingness to share once he had it. If he had followed any example, it was that of Napoleon, not Marx. Oh, okay. So, like, you got a rebellion in Marxism, 1947 to 1950, career in law and politics in 1950 to 52. So, Castro learned of planned expedition to overthrow the right-wing government. Rafael Trujillo, a U.S. ally in the Dominican Republic. Being president of the University Committee for Democracy in the Dominican Republic, Castro joined the expedition. The military force consisted of around 1,200 troops, mostly Cubans and exiled Dominicans, and they intended to sail from Cuba in July 1947. Guairo's government stopped the invasion under U.S. pressure, although Castro and many of his comrades evaded arrest. Returned to Havana, Castro took a leading role in student protests against the killing of a high school pupil by government bodyguards. The protests, accompanied by the crackdown on those considered communists, led to violent clashes between activists and police in 1948 in February, in which Castro was badly beaten. At this point, his public speeches took on distinctly leftist slant by condemning social and economic inequality in Cuba. In contrast, his former public criticisms had centered on condemning corruption and U.S. imperialism. So yeah, it was pretty much like guerrilla warfare type of a man. So what? Okay, how did Castro untrained guerrillas beat Batista's war machine? So I guess like following like military tactics here. Several days after they landed their leaky cabin cruiser on Cuba's southeastern coast, December 1556. Uh, been decimal. Some rebels have fled, others have been captured and killed, escaping the chaos. So things didn't go from a very good start. At this time, a border landing on Cuba's swampy coast, the 30-year-old Castro was already a well-known figure in his homeland. After the Cuban government captured him and put him on trial following a failed attack on a military barracks in Santiago de Cuba, he had jailed and 29 conspirators. So yeah, I guess like wherever these kind of rifles are, like that's his thing. So he got sort of like a Tommy gun thing. Uh, he is a very good speaker. And like this might put under uh, Fidel Castro as like him or love him, mostly. I mean, love him or hate him, mostly hate him. He was had a generalship. That's one of the act factors of the show. Is like, how well do you lead your men? And Fidel Castro was an impressive leader. And he reigned for a very long time until his natural death at the age of 90, making him like even probably on the same level as maybe like Genghis Khan and George Washington as far as like being able to lead your men and come out on top almost every time. I just wish I could find like some firearms. Uh, so I guess like a few of those weapons he has probably was provided by North Korea. So it's probably a few 1980 style uh, quote unquote modern weapons of the time for the 80s. Okay. Okay. Speaking of revolutionaries, Che Guevara. Guevara. Kind of. Uh, M1 carbine, M1 A1 carbine, Winchester Model 70, M1 Garand, uh, Spring M190383 Springfield, one of Camilo. Che Guevara was really into shotguns and Molotov cocktails. Okay. Born Ernesto Guevara in June 14th, 1928, died October 9th, 1967, age 39. Execution by shooting. Okay. Ernesto Guevara was born to Ernesto Guevara Lynch and Cecilia de la Serna y Loesa uh, in Rosario, Argentina. Although the legal name on his birth certificate was Ernesto Guevara, his name sometimes appears with a de la Serna and or Lynch accompanying it. He was the eldest of 5 children in an upper-class Argentine family of pre-independence immigrant Basque, Spanish, and Irish ancestry. Two of Guevara's notable 18th century ancestors included Luis Mariana Peralta, a prominent Spanish landowner in colonial California, and Patrick Lynch, who immigrated from Ireland to the Rio de la Plata Grande. Referring to Shea's restless nature, his father declared, "The first thing to note is that in my son's veins flowed the blood of the Irish rebels." And early on in his life, Ernestito, as he was later called, developed an affinity to the poor. Growing up in a family with leftist leanings, Guevara was introduced to a wide spectrum of political perspectives even as a boy. His father, a staunch supporter of Republicans from the Spanish Civil War, would host veterans from the conflict in the Guevara home. Despite numerous bouts of acute asthma that were to affect him throughout his life, which you can put on the list of health uh, on the list of this warrior, he suffered from asthma, which could play into a role when you're, because they didn't I don't know what type. They didn't have inhalers, I'm assuming back then, but he gotta had to have some proto version of it, or just take deep breaths and try to calm down. But you probably can't do in the middle of a battle. But I'm pretty sure that would affect him in like in the heat of a fight when you're huffing and puffing. Um, uh, he excelled as an athlete, enjoying swimming, football, golf, and shooting, while also becoming an untiring cyclist. He was an avid rugby union player and played a fly half for Club Universitario de uh, Buenos Aires. Jesus, it's like I can't get all of these. I know like Buenos Aires obviously, but and there's a few of these that I'm gonna be struggling with. So my apologies. His rugby playing earned him the nickname Fuser, a contradiction of El Forbunto Furious, and his mother's surname De La Serna for his aggressive style of play. So yeah, I mean like that could also play into his health because like despite his asthma, he was an athlete. So he probably had like a particular diet that make him very lean, but fast and maybe not like like super strong or anything like that, but he had like a decent muscle tone, but pretty sure he's pretty lean, make him pretty fast. Uh, so you can pretty much, despite the asthma, can last in a fight for a good period of time. Intellectual literary interests, Guevara learned chess from his father and began participating in local tournaments by the age of 12. So he's a pretty smart kid too. He has brains and bronze, so that's weighs heavily in his favor. During adolescence and throughout his life, he studied poetry, especially that of Pablo Neruda, John Keats, Antonio Machado, Federico Garcia Lorca, Gabriela Mistral, Cesar Vigil, and Walt Whitman. He could also recite Rudyard Kipling's If and Jose Hernandez Martin Ferrero by heart. The Guevara home contained more than 3,000 books, which allowed Guevara to be an enthusiastic and electric reader with interests including Karl Marx, William Faulkner, Andre Gide, Emilio Salgari, and Julius Verne, or Jules Verne, I should say. Additionally, he enjoyed the works of Jawaharlal Nehru, Franz Kafka, Albert Camus, Vladimir Lenin, and Jean-Paul Sartre, as well as Anatole France, Frederick Engels, H.G. Wells, and Robert Frost. As he grew older, he developed an interest in Latin American writers. I'm not going to go all these names, but like Mauricio Querruga, Cyril Alegría, Jorge Icaza, Ruben Dario, and Miguel Aturas. Many of these authors' ideas he cataloged in his own handwritten notebooks of concepts and definitions and philosophies of influential intellectuals. These included composing analytical sketches of Buddha and Aristotle, along with examining Bertrand Russell on love and patriotism, Jack London on society, and Nietzsche as the idea of death. Sigmund Freud's ideas fascinated him as he quoted him on a variety of topics from dreams and libido to narcissism and Oedipus complex. Od, uh, oh yeah, like I know that term. I know why I'm reading it and I'm mispronouncing it. Oedipus. Jesus. Yeah. Oedipus complex. You basically want to F your mother subconsciously, which a lot of, from what I hear from a lot of therapists, kind of refute at least a few of the things from Sigmund Freud, you know, because, science and the mind and body has evolved since the time of Sigmund Freud. But at the time of Sigmund Freud, it was peak psychology. And it held some weights, but obviously, like I said, science evolves over time. His favorite subjects in school included philosophy, mathematics, engineering, political science, sociology, history, and archaeology. He's a very smart guy. And he absorbed all that. He could easily been Batman. To be frank with you, Che Guevara could have easily been a Latin Batman. With all this being athletic and super smart, philosophy and poetry, and recite a lot of them by heart. This dude, man, it's no wonder he was so idolized. A CIA biographical and personality report dated February 13th, 1958, and declassified decades later, made note of Guevara's range of academic interest and intellect, describing him as quite well read, while adding that Che is fairly intellectual for a Latino. Racist. In 1948, Guevara entered the University of Buenos Aires to study medicine. His hunger to explore the world led him to intersperse his collegiate pursuits with two long introspective journeys that fundamentally changed the way he viewed himself and the contemporary economic conditions in Latin America. The first expedition in 1950 was a 4,500-kilometer solo trip through the rural province of North Argentina on a bicycle on which he had installed a small engine. Guevara then spent 6 months working as a nurse at sea on Argentina's merchant marine freighters and oil tankers. His second expedition in 1951 was a 9-month, 8,000-kilometer continental motorcycle trek through part of South America. For the latter, he took a year off from his studies to embark with his friend Alberto, with the final goal of spending a few weeks volunteering at the San Pablo leper colony in Peru on the banks of the Amazon River. This guy is, fucking phenomenal. My God. How is he not Batman? With all this. And he didn't have Batman's money. He was just well off. He wasn't super rich, but he wasn't poor either. He was middle class. Holy shit. Activism, exile in Mexico, Guam invasion, the Cuban Revolution at this point. As second in command, Guevara was a harsh disciplinarian who sometimes shot defectors. Deserters were punished as traitors, and Guevara was known to send squads to track those seeking to abandon their duties. As a result, Guevara became feared for his brutality and ruthlessness. Scratch the Batman part, maybe he's just Deathstroke. Shit. During the guerrilla campaign, Guevara was also responsible for the summary executions of a number of men accused of being informers, deserters, or spies. In his diaries, Guevara described the first such execution of Eutimio Guevara, a peasant who had acted as a guide for the Castris guerrillas, but admitted treason when it was discovered he accepted the promise of 10,000 pesos for repeatedly giving away the rebels' positions for an attack by the Cuban Air Force. Such information also allowed Batista's army to burn the homes of peasants sympathetic to the revolution. Upon Guevara's request that they end his life quickly, Che stepped forward and shot him in the head, writing, "The situation was uncomfortable for the people and for Eutimio, so I ended the problem giving him a shot with a .32 pistol in the right side of the brain, with exit force in the right temporal lobe." His scientific notions and matter-of-fact descriptions suggested to one biographer as remarkable detachment to violence by that point in the war. Later, Guevara published a literary account of the incident titled Death of a Traitor, where he transfigured Utumio's betrayal and pre-execution request that the revolution take care of his children into a revolutionary parable about redemption through sacrifice. Um, Although he maintained a demanding and harsh disposition, Guevara also viewed his role of commander as one of a teacher, entertaining his men during breaks between engagements with readings from the likes of Robert Louis Stevenson, Miguel de Cervantes, and Spanish lyric poets. Together with this role, and inspired by Jose Marti's principle of literacy without borders, Guevara further ensured that his rebel fighters made daily time to teach the uneducated campesinos with whom they lived and fought to read and write, in what Guerrero termed the battle against ignorance. Tomas Alba, who fought under Guerrero's command, later stated that Che was loved in spite of being stern and demanding. He would have give our life for him. We would have give our life for him. So, in a way, he was an impressive leader. And he still is revered despite uh, uh, his like very harsh leadership. It's kind of like uh, uh, tough love kind of situation, I guess. Uh, Later morning on October 9th, Bolivian President Rene Bernales ordered that Guerrero be killed. The order was late. Uh, he was taken to Panama for interrogation. The executioner who volunteered to kill Guerrero was Mario Terán, a 27-year-old sergeant in the Bolivian army who, while half drunk, requested to shoot Guerrero because three of his friends from B Company, all with the same first name of Mario, had been killed in a firefight several days earlier with Guerrero's band of guerrillas. To make the bullet wounds appear consistent with the story the Bolivian government planned to release to the public, Felix Rodriguez ordered Terán not to shoot Guerrero in the head, but aimed carefully to make it appear that Guerrero had been killed in action during a clash with the Bolivian army. Gary uh, Prado, the Bolivian captain in command of the army that captured Guerrero, said that the reasons uh, Barrentos ordered the immediate execution of Guerrero were so there could be no possibility for Guerrero to escape from prison, and also so there could be no drama of public trial where adverse public might happen. After 30 minutes before Guerrero was killed, Felix Rodriguez attempted to question him about the whereabouts of other guerrilla fighters who were currently at large, but Guevara continued to remain silent. Rodriguez, assisted by a few Bolivian soldiers, helped Guerrero to his feet and took him outside to the hut to parade him before the other Bolivian soldiers, where he posed with Guevara for a photo opportunity, where one soldier took a photograph of Rodriguez and the soldier standing alongside Guevara. Afterwards, Rodriguez told Guevara that he was going to be executed. A little later, Guevara was asked by one of the Bolivian soldiers guarding him if he was thinking about his own immortality. No, he replied. I'm thinking about the immortality of the revolution. A few minutes later, Sergeant Terán entered to the hut to shoot him, whereupon Guevara reportedly stood up and spoke to Terán what were his last words. I know you've come to kill me. Shoot, coward. You are only going to kill a man. Terán hesitated, then pointed his self-loading M2 carbine at Guevara and opened fire, hitting him in the arms and legs. Then, as Guevara writhed on the ground, apparently biting one of his wrists to avoid crying out, Terrain fired another burst, fatally wounding him in the chest. Guevara was pronounced dead at 1:10 p.m. local time, according to Rodriguez. In all, Guevara was shot 9 times by Terrain. This included 5 times in the legs, once in the right shoulder and arm, and once in the chest and throat. Months earlier, during the last public declaration to the conference, Guevara had written his own epitaph stating, "Wherever death may surprise us, let it be welcome, provided that this our battle cry may have reached some receptive ear and another hand may be extended to wield our weapons." So, yeah, Che Guevara. This dude, you gotta have Che Guevara on this because this dude. Oh, I didn't even put on didn't switch over to the slide. Yeah, you gotta have Che Guevara on the list of just like infamous or famous warriors in history. And like I had to make sure I get like the most iconic because he's still on T-shirts. This guy is, you know, you know, uh, some put him as like one of those kind of like leaders for like rebels and people who follow the works of Karl Marx and like I won't say Machiavellianism, but just leaders for rebels out there who wants to fight against oppression and and stuff like that. And like Che Guevara is one of those kind of like leaders. Okay, I had to put a Native American on here as another warrior. So I got like the Cherokee Indian, Native American. I'm sorry. Okay, the Cherokee spear. You got 2 club weapons, 3 blowguns. Let's see. And of course, like the tomahawk, very iconic. Um, well, I guess you kind of get the point, I guess. Got the right one, didn't I? Yeah, I think so. A Cherokee language name for Cherokee people in is Inwawa, Iniwawa, of Waya. I'm sorry, translating as principal people. Many theorists, through all unproven, unbound, but about the origin of the name Cherokee, may have originally been derived from one of the competitive tribes in the area. For instance, the Choctaw word Chalaki means people who live in the mountains, and Choctaw means people who live in the cave country. The Cherokee did live along the rivers in mountainous areas. The earliest Spanish translation of the name from 1755 is recorded as Thaulaki. but it dates to accounts related to Hernando de Soto expedition in the mid 16th century. Another theory is that Cherokee derives from the Lower Creek word uh, Chulagi, as the Creek were also in the mountainous regions. Okay, anthropologists and historians have two main theories of Cherokee origins. One is that the Cherokee or Iroquoian speaking people are relative latecomers to southern Appalachia, who have migrated in late prehistoric times from the northern areas of the Great Lakes. Uh, the Cherokee occupied numerous towns throughout the river valleys and mountain ridges of their homelands. What were called the lower towns were found in what is present-day western Oconee County, South Carolina, along the Coe River, called the Savannah River in its lower portion. The principal town of lower towns was Coe. Uh, Other Cherokee towns of the Coe River included Estoy and Sugartown. I'm not trying to find like the tribe itself, Cherokee Nation. The okay, same thing. Uh, Before 1794, the Cherokee had no standing national government. Its people were highly decentralized and lived in bands and clans according to uh, matrilineal kinship system. The people lived in towns located in scattered autonomous tribal areas related by kinship throughout the southern Appalachia region. Various leaders were periodically appointed by mutual consent of the towns to represent the towns or bands to French, British, and later United States authorities as was needed. The Cherokee knew this leader as First Beloved Man, or Uku. The English had translated this as chief. The chief's function was to serve as focal point for negotiations with the encroaching Europeans. Hanging Maw was recognized as chief by the United States government, but not by the majority of Cherokee people. So yeah, I mean, I always had like just a huge respect for the Native American culture. They already have like on Deadliest Warrior the Apache, the Comanche, and of course you got the Pacific name, uh, the Native American Crazy Horse in season 3. So yeah, I keep it going. Just like with the African American warriors, uh, yeah, I have at least once in each season. I think that the Cherokee people, let's put them on the list. The Egyptian warriors. I couldn't find like a specific name, but it's like Pharaoh's, royal guards. Okay. Uh, Copish. Copish bronze sword. Okay. Ornamental axe. Of course, iron. Oh, well, got bow and arrow. I'm pretty sure there's more. Mm. Mm. Eh. Okay. Ancient Egyptian soldiers were the main ingredient of what made ancient Egypt a great civilization. The military might of ancient Egypt was what translated the pharaoh's ideas and tactics into reality. They are also one of the factors that kept ancient Egypt continuous for over 3,000 years. At first, there was no standing army, meaning ancient Egyptian soldiers were brought together from different villages in order to be trained and serve in a military campaign and then disband once the campaign was over. The young men would then go back to their old jobs and villages. But once the advantage of having a dedicated army of soldiers was seen, the permanent army was set up in the new kingdom and the career of the soldier was created. Okay, military training for the ancient Egyptians. Wrestling, sandbag lifting, archery, spearing, free fighting, knife throwing, charioting, target practice, stick fighting. Some of the weapons of choice will be bow and arrow, knives and swords, axes, spears, maces, and sticks. So a nice little brief rundown. Couldn't get like a name for a specific title, but it's like Pharaoh's guards, I guess. But I think that would be like interesting to have like an ancient Egyptian soldier. Okay, this one, what is it called? Hawaiian Kua warriors. As you know, their stuff is not that too dissimilar to what the Maori warriors use, as I later like found out. The Kua warriors were capable of slaughter, and their weapons were designed to inflict bodily harm. Of the many weapons that use, a spear or pololu was a common weapon of their armies. These weapons were several variations. Weapons of choice. Ooh, look how intricate! It's very similar to just a Stone Age Maori warrior. Uh, This looks like a freaking scorpion's spear thing, just not with with a whip chain. A short spear or melee weapon, hand weapon, or close weapon, if any weapon used in direct hand-to-hand combat. Pahua weapon image. Uh, Melee weapons were generally used as a thrusting weapon or for leg sweeping. Some were javelin-like. Like, get over here! Get over here! Shark lay, another melee weapon. A round weapon or club can use as many as 30 or more shark teeth laced around its edges, and smaller weapons such as little as 3 or 4 teeth. Uh, Seriously, that's it. Oh, wait a minute, there's spears right here. Well, obviously, there's like more than that. The Hawaiian Koa warriors were the elite fighters of the islands, and their name originated from the tree they were used to fashion their weapons, the koa tree. Not only would the tree provide the koa their name, it would provide them as with all the battle tools, which were vast and diverse, suitable for all types of battlefield combat. The ancient Hawaiian warriors were the battlefield fighters that would go to war for their territory and livelihood in the Hawaiian Isles. Each of the major Hawaiian islands would have their own chief, and of course, power and status was their priority. The Hawaiian elite warriors, commonly known as the koa, were the main tools for the chiefs and were their most trained and skilled warriors. In addition to the elite skills of the koa warriors, the chiefs would employ hundreds of infantrymen and skirmish fighters to obtain their power, retain their rule, and ensure the future success of their islands. So I thought, like, oh, okay, Hawaiian warriors. So, like, why not put a Hawaiian warrior on the list? All right, coming up 2 hours, but having too much fun. Okay, Huey P. Newton. I already got like a matchup for him just right off the bat. Che Guevara. Him versus Che Guevara will be very interesting because they are just like parallel to each other as far as like, famous revolutionaries. Misspell that. Uh, it's kind of like the, IRA as far as like, they probably have to get the, because he led the Black Panther Party. It'd be cool to see like Huey leading, 4 members of the Black Panther Party against Che Guevara and 4 of his people against each other. Uh, but I imagine Huey had to get most of his weapons off the black market. But what, you know, Huey P. Newton Gun Club. So like I guess like AR-15. Some pistols. Looks like this looks like a shotgun right here. But okay. All right. Huey Percy Newton, born February 17th, 1942, uh, Monroe, Louisiana, died August 22nd, 1989. This is like a year after I was born. Um, Oakland, California, murdered by gunshot. Another activist. Matter of fact, let's say Guevara's like, because he got like organization, the Black Panther Party. But Che Guevara, what is his? Um, United Party of the Cuban Social Revolution. The Cuban Socialists, I guess. You can put it the Cuban Socialists. Okay. Newton was born in Monroe, Louisiana in 1942 during WW2, the youngest child of Armilla Johnson and Walter Newton, a sharecropper and Baptist lay preacher. His parents named him after Huey Long, former governor of Louisiana. Monroe is located in Louisiana's Paris, Orchestra or Cheta Paris, which has a history of violence against blacks since Reconstruction. According to a 2015 report by the Equal Justice Initiative from 1877 to 1950, a total of 37 black people were documented as lynched in that parish. Most murders had taken place around the turn of the 20th century. This was the 50 this was the fifth highest total of lynchings of any county in the South. As a response to the violence, the Newton family migrated to Oakland, California, participating in the second wave of the Great Migration of African Americans out of the South. The Newton family was close-knit, but quite poor. They moved often within the San Francisco Bay Area during Newton's childhood. Despite this, Newton said he never went without food and shelter as a child. As a teenager, he was arrested several times for criminal offenses, including gun possession and vandalism at age 14. Growing up in Oakland, Newton stated that he was made to feel ashamed for being black. In his autobiography, Revolutionary Suicide, he wrote, "During those long years in Oakland public schools, I did not have one teacher who taught me anything relevant to my own life or experience. Not one instructor ever awoke in me a desire to learn more or to question or to explore the worlds of literature, science, and history. All they did was try to rob me of the sense of my own uniqueness and worth, and in the process nearly killed my urge to inquire." Newton graduated from Oakland Technical High School in 1959 with a diploma. He attended Merritt College, where he earned an associate's art degree in 1966. Plato's Republic was an influential work in Newton's early adult life. He told his court during the trial of the killing of Officer John Frey that he had learned to read from studying the Republic. After that, he started questioning everything. In his autobiography, Revolutionary Suicide, he states, "Most of all, I questioned what was happening in my own family and in the community around me." Newton continued his education studying at San Francisco Law School and the University of California at Santa Cruz, where he earned a bachelor's degree. He was a member of the Phi Beta Sigma. He later continued his studies, and in 1980, he completed a PhD in social philosophy at Santa Cruz. So, because I'm saying, like, Che Guevara and Huey P. Newton should be, like, going up against each other, revolutionary versus revolutionary. But both of these guys are exceptionally smart. Clearly exceptionally smart. The thing is, Che actually had like the athletic build. They're both pretty slender men, but Che is an athlete. So it's just like, when it comes to like a fisticuffs, like, Shay can probably like, you know probably outbox uh 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 Huey probably pretty easily, but we don't know. That's why you need historians on this. Uh, Founding of the Black Panther Party. As a student of the Merritt College in Oakland, Newton became involved in Bay Area politics. He joined the Afro American Association, became a prominent member of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, Beta 2 chapter, and played a role in getting the first Black African American history course adopted as part of the college's curriculum. Newton learned about Black history from Donald Worden, who later would change his name to Khalid Abdullah Tariq al-Masar, the leader of the AAA. Later, Newton concluded that Worden offered solutions that didn't work. In his autobiography, Newton says of Worden, the mass media, the oppressors, give him public exposure for only one reason. He will lead the people away from the truth of their situation. In college, Newton read the works of Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, Franz Fanon, Malcolm X, Mao Zedong, or Zedong, Emily Durkheim, and Che Guevara. So Che Guevara is one of, Newton's influences. During his time at Merritt College, he met Bobby Seale, and the two co-founded the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in October 1966. Based on a casual conversation, Seale became a chairman and Newton became Minister of Defense. The Black Panther Party was an African American left-wing organization advocating for the right of self-defense for Black people in the United States. The Black Panther Party's beliefs were greatly influenced by Malcolm X, Newton stated. Therefore, the words on this page cannot convey the effect that Malcolm had on the Black Panther Party, although, as far as I'm concerned, the party is a living testament to his work. The party achieved national and international renown through their deep involvement in the Black Power movement and the politics of the 1960s and 1970s. So I should say the Black Panther Party. What is the Black Panther's main superpower? Oh no, this is talking about the comic book character. Did the Black Panthers starting to carry their guns around publicly in Oakland, California in the 1960s, a new wave of gun control laws came about. It was these laws that ironically sparked a backlash among rural white conservatives who were concerned that the government was coming to get their guns next. So it's ironically, very ironic. AK-47, Wilson's shotguns, hunting rifles, and 44 Magnum handguns. So yeah, I think Huey P. Newton, um, uh, definitely belongs. Like I said, like there's a few matches on the list that I think like, yeah, Huey P. Newton, Che Guevara definitely should be like versus each other. What's this? Japanese Self-Defense Forces. That because I don't think we ever had like a modern day Japanese warrior on the show. We just had like the past warriors. Self-defense. Okay. Anti-tank missile. 79 anti-landing craft. Uh, infantry weapons. Okay, SCK uh, uh, mine via N millimeter pistol, mine via uh, 9 millimeter machine pistol, Hawa Type 89 assault rifle, Hawa Type 64 battle rifle, Sumai Tomo Minimi 556 millimeter machine gun, light machine gun, uh, M24 sniper rifle. That was used a couple of times on the show, I think. Excuse me. Uh, or Hawa Type 64 sniper rifle, so it's something new right here you can showcase. Hawa Type 96 grenade launcher. Type 06 rifle grenade. M67 series fragmentation grenade. Claymore. So yeah, you got quite a few options here. Okay, start. The initial start was in the 20th century. Japan was deprived of any military capability after being defeated by the Allies in WW2 and was forced to sign a surrender agreement presented by General Douglas MacArthur in 1945. It was occupied by the U.S. forces and only had a minor domestic police force on which to rely for domestic security and crime. Rising tensions in Europe and Asia due to the Cold War, coupled with leftist-inspired strikes and demonstrations in Japan, prompted some conservative leaders to question the unilateral reunification of all military capabilities. These sentiments were intensified in 1950 as occupation troops began to be moved to the Korean War theater. This left Japan mostly defenseless, vulnerable, and very much aware of the need to enter a mutual defense relationship with the United States to guarantee the nation's external security. Encouraged by the American occupation authorities, the Japanese government in July 1950 authorized the establishment of a national police reserve consisting of 75,000 men equipped with light infantry weapons. In 1952, the Coastal Safety Force, the waterborne counterpart of NPR, was also founded. In the 21st century, the Anti-Terrorism Special Measures Law was passed on October 29, 2001. It allows the JSDF to contribute by itself international efforts to prevention and eradication of terrorism. While on duty, the JSDF can use weapons to protect itself and others who come under its control. Previously, Japan's policy was non-involvement. On March 27, 2004, the Japan Defense Agency activated the Special Operations Group with the mandate under the JGSDF as its counter-terrorist unit. So yeah, you gotta have like some deep like maybe like these guys can go up against the British SAS as far as like modern warriors. That'd be dope. Uh, Okay, Joseph Stalin. Yes, another one who's very controversial. Not even controversial. He's straight up like evil son of a bitch. But he's another person that I think can go up against someone like uh, Castro, dictator versus dictator. Another dictator versus dictator matchup. Okay. Uh, born December 18th, 1878. Died March 1953. March 5th, 1953. Age 74. Stalin was born in the Georgian town of Gori, then part of the Tiflis Governorate of the Russian Empire and home to a mix of Geor- Geor- Georgian, Azerbaijanian, Armenian, Russian, and Jewish communities. He was born in December 18th and baptized on December 29th. His birth name was Osib. Not even going to even try. He was nicknamed Soso, a diminutive, or Asib, Iosib. His parents were, he was their only child to survive past infancy. Now I'm thinking about it, you could also put, speaking of Russian, uh, uh, crap, what's his name? Another infamous Russian warrior. He was in the Kingsman prequel. Kingsman. Uh, Gregory Rasputin. Yeah, there you go. Uh, you probably should put Rasputin on the list of warriors too. Not gonna go into him, but yeah, like Rasputin. While I'm thinking of like a Russian warrior, yeah, you can put him on the list as well. But yeah. So anyway, uh, uh, Barsarian was a shoemaker who was employed in a workshop owned by another man. He was initially a financial success, but later fell into decline, and the family found itself in living in poverty. Barsarian became an alcoholic and drunkenly beat his wife and son. Akaterin and Stalin left the home by 1883 and began a wandering life, moving through 9 different rented rooms over the next decade. In 1886, they moved into the house of a family friend, Father Christopher Charkvany. Uh, Akaterin worked as a house cleaner and launderer and was determined to send her son to school. In September 1888, Stalin enrolled on the Orthodox Gori Church School, a place secured by Charkvany. Although he got into many fights, Stalin excelled academically, displaying talent in painting and drama classes, writing his own poetry, and singing as a choir boy. Stalin faced several severe health problems, and an 1884 smallpox infection left him with facial scars. And at age 12, he was seriously injured when he was hit by a phaeton. What's that? Open carriage. Oh, okay. Uh, a carriage drawn by horses, probably because of a lifelong disability in his left arm. In August 1894, Stalin enrolled in the Orthodox Spiritual Seminary in Tiflis, enabled by a scholarship that allowed him to study at a reduced rate. He joined 600 trainee priests who boarded there. He achieved high grades, He continued writing poetry. 5 of his poems on themes such as nature, land, and patriotism were published under the pseudonym of Solcio. Uh, in October 1899, Stalin began work as a meteorologist at the Typhus Observatory. He had light workload and therefore had plenty of time for revolutionary activity. He attracted a group of supporters through his classes in socialist theory and co-organized a secret workers' mass meeting in May Day 1900, at which he successfully encouraged many of the men to take strike action. By this point, the Empire's secret police, the Korana, were aware of Stalin's activities in Typhus Revolutionary Milieu. They attempted to arrest him in March 1901, but he escaped and went into hiding, living off donations of friends and sympathizers. Remaining on the ground, he helped plan a demonstration for May Day 1901, in which 3,000 marchers clashed with authorities. He continued to evade arrest by using aliases and sleeping in different apartments. In November 1901, he was elected to the Typhus Committee of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, a Marxist party founded in 1898. So a lot of Marxist stuff going on with a lot of these characters, or these uh, historical figures. Okay, let me so he eventually became a general, but let's see. Uh, uh, I might not find like most weapons. I should be able to Google it. You know, that's what Google is for. Uh, Not looking for ones that named after him. I'm trying to find like ones he actually used. He has like I guess a revolver and a pistol. Some sort of sniper rifle. But yeah, you got like another established general like Stalin going up against someone like Fidel Castro, who will, primarily use like guerrilla tactics, but one managed to have like a long-standing reign and haven't been killed by his enemies, while Stalin did die. Uh, uh, I'm pretty sure by uh, what was his death? What else? Because he uh, worked with the Nazi Party. So yeah, not somebody you should be idolizing at all. Uh, on March 1st, 1953, Stalin's staff found him semi-conscious on the bedroom floor of his Kontsevo dacha. He had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. He was moved on to a couch and remained there for 3 days. He was hand-fed using a spoon, given various medicines and injections, and leeches were applied to him. Obviously, not like a viable source of medical usage. Savannah Fastly were called to the dacha on March 2nd. The latter was drunk and angrily shouted at the doctors, resulting in him being sent home. Stalin died on March 5th, 1953. According to Savlana, it had been a difficult and terrible death. An autopsy revealed that he had died of cerebral hemorrhage and that he also suffered from severe damage to his cerebral arteries due to atherosclerosis. It is conjectured that Stalin was murdered. Vera has been suspected of murder, although no firm evidence has ever appeared, according to a report published in the New York Times. Stalin was poisoned by warfarin by his own Politburo members. His body was embalmed and then placed on display in Moscow's House of Unions for 3 days. Crowds were such that a crush killed about 100 people. The funeral involved the body being laid to rest in Lenin Mausoleum in Red Square on March 9th. Hundreds of thousands attended. That month featured a surge in arrests for anti-Soviet agitation, as those celebrating Stalin's death came to police attention. The Chinese government instituted a period of official mourning for Stalin's death. A memorial service in his honor was also held at St. George the Martyr, Holborn in London. So, yeah, that's Stalin. Don't even get too further into this thing. John Dillinger. I think John Dillinger versus Billy the Kid, just like you got Jesse James versus Al Capone, John Dillinger versus Billy the Kid. Two youngish kind of guys that died, fairly in their 20s. And no, not played by. And no, this is not. Johnny Depp. Okay, this is actually a different John. Okay, weapons used by John Dillinger: Colt 38 Super Automatic, Colt Monitor, Model 1905 Smith & Wesson, Savage Model 1907 ACP Automatic Black. Born June 22nd, 1903, died July 22nd, 1932, Chicago, Illinois. Died of gunshot wounds. Bank robbery, murder, assault of an officer, grand theft auto. John Dillinger was born June 22nd, 1903 at 2053rd Cooper Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. The younger of two children born to John Wilson Dillinger and Mary Ellen Molly Lancaster. John Dillinger's parents had married in August 23rd, 1887. Dillinger's father was a grocer by trade and reportedly a harsh man. In an interview with reporters, Dillinger said that he was firm in his discipline and believed in the adage, spare the rod and spoil the child. Dillinger's older sister, Audrey, was born 1889, and the mother died in 1907, just before his fourth birthday. Audrey married Emmett Fred Hancock that year and had 7 children. She cared for her brother John for several years until their father remarried in 1912 to Elizabeth Lizzie Fields. They had 3 children. Yeah, spare the rod, spoil the child. Hurt people. So it's like that adage, we let her know now, never holds water. It's never good for any kid. kid, lots of times kids just need nurturing and understanding because they're people too, not just like pets that you order around and expect them to follow. Sorry, I'm just speaking through my own situations. Uh, Formative years, marriage. As a teenager, Dillinger was frequently in trouble for fighting and petty theft. He was also noted for his bewildering personality and bullying of smaller children. He quit school to work in an Indianapolis machine shop. His father feared that the city was corrupting his son, prompting him to move the family to Mooresville, Indiana in 1921. Dillinger's wild and rebellious behavior was unchanged despite his new rural life. In 1922, he was arrested for auto theft and his relationship with his father deteriorated. In 1923, Dillinger's troubles led him enlisting in the United States Navy, where he was a petty officer third class machinery repairman assigned aboard the battleship USS Utah, but he deserted a few months later when his ship was docked in Boston. He was eventually dishonorably discharged some months later. Dillinger returned to Mooresville where he met Beryl Ethel Hovius. The two married in April 12, 1924. He attempted to settle down, but he had difficulty. Unable to find a job, he began planning a robbery with his friend Ed Singleton, who was an ex-convict. The two robbed a local grocery store, stealing $50. While leaving the scene, the criminals were spotted by a minister who recognized the men and reported them to the police. During the robbery, Dillinger had struck a victim on the head with a machine belt wrapped in a cloth and had also carried a gun which, although it discharged, hit no one. The two men were arrested the next day. Singleton pleaded not guilty, but after Dillinger's father, the local Morrisville church deacon, discussed the matter with Morgan County prosecutor Omar O'Hara, his father convinced Dillinger to confess to the crime and plead guilty without retaining a defense attorney, which is a bad idea. Dillinger was convicted of assault and battery with intent to rob and conspiracy to commit a felony. He expected a lenient probation sentence as a result of his father's discussion with O'Hara, but instead he was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison for his crimes. His father told reporters he regretted his advice and was appalled by the sentence. He pleaded with the judge to shorten the sentence, but with no success. En route to Mooresville to testify against Singleton, Dillinger briefly escaped his captors but was apprehended within a few minutes. Singleton had a change of venue and was sentenced to jail term to 2 to 14 years. He died September 2nd, 1937. The most infamous bank robber, obviously, is Dillinger and his Dillinger Gang. Dillinger, known to have participated with the Dillinger Gang in 12 separate bank robberies between June 21st, 1933 and June 30th, 1934. And of course, he got shot in Chicago outside of a movie theater. Which movie theater was that? By July 1934, Dillinger had dropped completely out of sight, and the federal agents had no solid leads to follow. He had, in fact, drifted into Chicago, where he went under the alias of Jimmy Lawrence, a petty criminal from Wisconsin who bore a close resemblance to Dillinger. Working as a clerk, Dillinger found that in a large metropolis like Chicago, he was able to lead an anonymous existence for a while. What he did not realize was that the center of the federal agent's dragnet happened to be Chicago. When the authorities found Dillinger's blood-spattered getaway car on a Chicago side street, they were positive that he was in the city. All right, the Chicago's Biograph Theater in July 22nd, 1934. So yeah, I mean John Dillinger definitely should be on the list. Classic bank robber, classic gangster. Okay, Mexican Special Forces. Almost done. Uh, the Army has a Special Force Corps, unified command consisting of three Special Forces brigades, a High Command GAFE, uh, uh, assigned to the Airborne Brigade, and several amphibious Special Forces groups. The Special Forces brigades are formed by 9 SF battalions. Uh, the High Command GAF is a group with no more than 100 members who are specially trained in counter-terrorist tactics. They receive orders directly from the Secretary of National Defense. Uh, I'm not 200% sure these are the specific weapons they use. Um, Never give me the exactly thing I asking for. I mean, it's possible for the Beretta AR-70, the Beretta ARX 160, the Model 92, Fusil FX 05 assault rifle. But I could be wrong. But, they ain't giving me much. But I figured we should get like a modern day Mexican warrior on the list for obvious reasons. Okay, back to ancient warriors. We got uh, Miyamoto Musashi. Okay. Uh, He pretty much used dual katanas. Uh, Wakasashi melee weapon, katana, longbow, multi attack. Musashi attacks 3 times when he takes the attack action and can use his bonus action to attack with the Wakasashi and 2 weapon fighting. Pretty sure you got more than that, but born 1584, died 1645. Details of Musashi's early life are difficult to verify. Musashi himself simply states in the Book of Five Rings that he was born in Huruma province. Uh, uh, Musashi gives his full name in the title of the Book of the Rings upbringing. Musashi ex- eczema developed in his infancy, and this adversely affected his appearance. Another story claims that he never took a bath because he did not want to be surprised unarmed. Wow, that's disgusting, even for back then. First duel. I have trained in the way of strategy since my youth, and at the age of 13, I fought a duel for the first time. My opponent was called Arima Kahi, a sword adept of the Shinto Ryu, and I defeated him. At the age of 16, I defeated a powerful adept by the name of Tashima Akayama, who came from Tajima province. At the age of 21, I went up to Kyoto and fought duels with several adepts of the sword from famous schools, but I never lost. Uh, so he's just like a the most like I guess one of the most iconic dual wielding swords masters in history, or at least in ancient Japan. So yeah, I figured like yeah, we get another ancient Japanese warrior, but one for a specific name and not just a generalized samurai or ronin, which technically he would be considered a ronin, uh, uh, a samurai without a master. We got the National Guard. Okay, okay. M67 fragmentation grenade, AN M14 thermite grenade, AN M8 white smoke grenade, colored smoke grenade, gas grenade, riot control grenade. What's all these grenades? Well, I guess National Guard United States. I guess we should be more specific. The first muster of the militia forces in what is today the United States took place on September 16th, 1565, in the newly established Spanish military town of St. Augustine. The militiamen were assigned to guard the expedition's supplies while their leader, Pedro Menendez de Alvarez, took the regular troops north to attack the French settlement at Fort Caroline on the St. Johns River. This Spanish militia tradition and the English tradition that would be established to the north would provide the basic nucleus for colonial defense in the New World. The militia tradition continued with the first permanent English settlements in the New World, Jamestown Colony and Plymouth Colony. Uh, the National Guard of several states, territories, and districts of Columbia serve as part of the first line defense for the United States. The State National Guard is organized into units stationed in each of the 50 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia, and operates under their respective state or territorial governor, except in the instance of Washington, D.C., where the National Guard operates under the President of the United States or his uh, designee. The governors exercise control through the state's adjutants general. The National Guard may be called up for active duty by the governors to help respond to domestic emergencies and disasters such as hurricanes, floods, and earthquakes. So yeah, I figured like, yeah, why don't we get the National Guard in here? They're warriors, duh. Uh, Ottoman Empire. As many times like ancient warriors, you know, on the show mentioned about like fighting against the Ottoman Empire. Why not have said empire on the list of warriors for season 4 and 5? Ottoman Empire. Follow Constantinople. So yeah, it was like as early as like 1299. It's probably even earlier than that. What weapons did they use? Uh, Turkish guns with UK locks. Got Ottoman armor and helmets made with interlocking rings of flattened metal and was reinforced at the front on arms and back with rectangular steel plates, similar to a coat of 10,000 nails. The yatagan makes its appearance in the second half of the 16th century and was an infantry weapon with the hilt generally made of bone or ivory, and the pommel is flared. Its short, slightly curved blade is sharp on one edge and comes to a fine point. The killage, which was used also by Vlad the Impaler. You got a bow and arrow, obviously. Helmet. We're sticking with like the ancient Ottoman Empire, not modern or semi-modern. Okay, last two. Don't want to sit there and try to spell this myself. Okay. Uh, Verking Vercingetorix was a Gallic king and chieftain of the Arvani tribe who united the Gauls in a failed revolt against Roman forces during the last phase of Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars. Despite having willingly surrendered to Caesar, he was executed in Rome. Uh, his name translates to Great Supreme King Leader of Warriors and Heroes. It is a compound of the prefix ver, over superior, Old Irish, Old Welsh, Old Breton, Cornish. Uh, Having been appointed governor of the Roman province of Galla Narbonese, modern province, in 58 BC, Julius Caesar proceeded to conquer the Gallic tribes beyond over the next few years, maintaining control through a careful divide and rule strategy. He made use of the factionalism among the Gallic elites, favoring certain noblemen over others with political support and Roman luxuries such as wine. Attempts at revolt such as that of Ambrose in 54 BC had secured only local support, but Vercingetorix, whose father, Celtulus, had been put to death by his own countrymen for seeking to rule over Gaul. managed to unify the Gallic tribes against the Romans and adopted more current styles of warfare. So it's like an ancient French warrior. Um, uh, like the names here. Well, anyway, let's go to the last one. Yu Fei. Excuse me. Yeah, mess that up. Looks like a Dao, Great River Taoist. Uh, uh, okay. Uh, Yao Fei. Uh, Several sources state that Yu, Yao or Yi, uh, was born into a poor tenement farmer's family in Taiguan County, Anyang Prefecture, Henan Province. This is an ancient Chinese warrior, by the way. Excuse me. Disguised as a wandering priest, warned uh, Chang Tuan, warned Yao Fei's father to put his wife and child inside a clay jar if the infant Yao Fei began to cry. A few days later, a young child squeezed Yao Fei's hand too hard and began to cry. Soon it began to rain and the yellow fever flooded, wiping out the village. Yao Fei's father held onto the clay jar as it was swept down the river, but eventually drowned. Although the much older biography of Yao Fei also mentions the flood, it states Yao Hao survived. Uh, this is pretty much like, whatever kind of stuff was like dictated at that time. Uh, Yao Fei's father used his family's plot of land for humanitarian efforts, but after it was destroyed in the flood, the young Fei, the Yao Fei was forced to help his father toil in the fields to survive. Yui uh, received most of his primary education from his father. In 1122, Yue joined the army, but had to return home later that year after the death of his father. In ancient China, a person was required by law to temporarily resign from their job when their parents died, as they could observe the customary period of mourning. For instance, Yahweh would have had to mourn his father's death for 3 years, but in all actuality, only 27 months. During this time, he would wear coarse mourning robes, caps, and slippers while abstaining from silken garments. When his mother died in 1136, he retired from a decisive battle against the Jin dynasty for the mourning period, but he was forced to cut the bereavement short because his generals begged him to come back. Martial training. There's a lot of like, oh, he can draw his bow like a bow of 300 kts, 400 pounds, a crossbow of 8 stone. But we're trying to make sure there's no fictitious stuff going on. Like, this dude did live and he was a general, but you gotta keep it to like, okay, here's the actual story. The two styles most associated with Yahweh's are Eagle Claw, Zangi Boxing. Okay, so this is like a fighting style. At least one of his fighting styles. Praying Mantis. What was like the weapons that we use? So I guess it's like something like that. Of course like a like a sword, but probably like this Dao type of sword, and this I guess it's like a cleaver, and this spear thing, and of course a bow and arrow. So yeah, and I guess that's it. Almost 3 hours now. Hopefully, like the God of War Ragnarok is fully installed by this point. I'm glad I did this. This kind of took up the time I needed while waiting for that to fully install. But I wanted to make this video for a while now. These are like words that I think deserve to be. If there was Deadliest Warrior season 4 and 5, I got a good chunk of people here that they can put on the list to make a proper season 4 and 5. More my particular ones that I really want to see matched up: Che Guevara versus Huey P. Newton, and John Dillinger versus Billy the Kid. But also Bonnie and Clyde, but I just don't know who should go up against them. But also Stalin versus Fidel Castro. Those like will be my stuff. But let me know in the comments below. I know this kind of went, took a hot while, but I'm too curious to know, at least these sets that I laid out, or do you have somebody in mind do you think should be in Deadliest Warrior season 4 and 5 if they would continue the show, which I really want them to do. I don't even care if they have to make it exclusively on Netflix or Amazon Prime. I don't even care. I just want the show to return in some facet or form or fashion because it's an incredible show. You can get all the seasons on Amazon Prime. You can buy them there. Not that expensive. You get a kick out of it. Honestly, you get a kick out of it, and just like good hard science and experts, and like the hosts are entertaining, and you get to see weapons, most of which you haven't that probably haven't been in use for thousands of years being displayed, and they have like dummies and pig flesh and stuff like that, so you can see what these kind of weapons would do to the human body in a realistic battle. And sometimes they tested the weapons on different armors that never wouldn't be in the same time period half the time. And that's how dope it is. Like seeing samurai katana clashing against the armor of a Viking. Two warriors that never would have met in history, whose weapons never be in contact with one another, clashing. And like you see that in action. It's interesting. It's really interesting, and it's like the whole entire show is very dope. So yeah, highly recommend it. But yeah, I will see you guys a little bit later. Well, I get God of War Ragnarok up and running because I'm super excited to get that going. I also did the God of War Ragnarok Collector's Edition unboxing, which the video is up on my YouTube channel. Once again, please leave a like, comment, subscribe to the links in the description. Follow me on Twitch, Twitter. Uh, hit the notification bell, and let's try to get those subscribers up to like 400, so I can do that milestone video that I really want to do for you guys to celebrate 400 subscribers. Doing like a hot ones challenge. I'll get like the hot ones, hot sauces, try them out on live for you guys as celebration. We're nearly there, and I really want to do it. I'm too interested to know how these hot sauces taste. So I decided to make that like a milestone video to test them out. But yeah,